The Torah and the feast days and all of these things, they're a shadow that is being cast, but the body casting the shadow is Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with another episode of the Common Man's Torah. I hope everyone's had a good week. I hope you had a chance to go back and read last week's portion after we did the video, because this week we're going to be building upon the emphasis that Moses and Paul were in total agreement with each other. And in fact, Paul was actually building upon and reinforcing Moses' message. Now, this week's portion is called Eikev, and that means on the heel of, or because of, or wherefore. You'll see it translated in several different ways. This is Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 12 through 11:25. Now, real quick, let's set some stage so that we can properly jump off and go where I believe at a high level the Lord would have us to be. Remember, Moses is standing before the children of Israel right before they're about to go into the land, and he's recounting to them the history of what has happened through the forefathers and specifically their parents, and he's telling them, don't make the mistakes that your parents have made. And there's a couple very key lessons that he's trying to reinforce with these children so that they will be successful when they go into the land. It's important that we understand that these lessons still remain for us today, and they're just as valid as opportunities for blessing and success in walking with the Lord in the callings of our lives, if we will heed the word, if we will get these things properly rooted in our heart. And we're going to see here that Paul actually continues to reinforce this message in the book of Romans. So first thing I want to do is just real quick, if you happen to enjoy these messages, and it's been a blessing on how we try to go about this from a very practical and just common approach to the Torah, if you haven't subscribed, would you consider just subscribing to the channel, liking, and maybe throwing a comment in there? These things, the reason people ask you to do these things is because they actually do help the channel. And so what it does is it puts our videos out in front of other people who may have similar interests. And so it expands the opportunity for the message to get out there. So if you would do that, thank you so much. And to those of you, we're at almost 990 subscribers. We're just about to crest over to 1,000. So thank you to everybody who has done that. I really appreciate it. It's been an awesome journey so far. Here's the thing about what Moses is reinforcing. And this is something that's really important for all of us, especially those of us who have come from a predominantly a Christian background, and we're starting to walk in the law of God, or seek to walk in God's ways, his commandments, also called the Torah. And we can get into this, and it can be really pressure inducing to the point where it makes it something it's a yoke that we're not able to bear. And this is the primary argument that Paul is having with the Judaizers in the New Testament, specifically in the book of Romans and in the book of Galatians. And it's a trap for us as we come back to this. And what's being emphasized in this week's Torah portion is exactly that. So we are going to jump into right at the very beginning, Deuteronomy 7:12, and we learn right away, or it's reinforced right away, that the Torah is for our good. Now, the thing about it is, it wasn't designed as a mechanism to bring about right standing with God in terms of if we are in his family, or if we are under Abraham's covenant, or if we are not under Abraham's covenant. The law of God is presented forth for God's people. And so it's for us after we have become a part of God's family, or under the covenant of Abraham. So it says starting in verse 12, "Wherefore it shall come to pass, if ye hearken to these judgments, and keep and do them, that the Lord thy God shall keep unto thee the covenant and the mercy which he sware unto thy fathers." Notice law and mercy go together. They've always gone together, and they went together back then, and they go together now, even after Christ is resurrected. He goes on and he says, and he will love thee and bless thee and multiply thee, and he will bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, your corn and your wine and your oil, and the increase of your kine and the flocks of your sheep in the land which he sware unto your fathers to give you. You shall be blessed above all people. There shall not be male or female barren among you or among your cattle, and the Lord will take away from you all sickness, and will put none of the evil diseases of Egypt, which you know, upon you, but will lay upon them all them that hate you. And you shall consume all the people which the Lord your God shall deliver you. Your eye shall have no pity upon them, neither shall you serve their gods, for that will be a snare unto you. If you shall say in your heart, these nations are more than I, how can I dispossess them? You shall not be afraid of them, but shall well remember what the Lord your God did unto Pharaoh and unto all Egypt. Notice he's connecting Egypt, and he's also connecting the fear that their parents had whenever Moses and the Lord through Moses told them to go and spy out the land. The great temptations which your eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders, and the mighty hand and the stretched out arm, whereby the Lord your God brought you out, so shall the Lord your God do unto all the people of whom you are afraid. Moreover, the Lord your God will send the hornet among them until they that are left and hide themselves from thee be destroyed. Thou shalt not be affrighted at them, for the Lord thy God is among you, a mighty God and terrible, and the Lord thy God will put out those nations before you little by little. You may not consume them at once, lest the beasts of the field increase upon thee. So a couple of things that we get out of this passage. The first one is that when it's how we go about worshiping, meaning what it is that we do to serve the Lord, really, or some other Lord, determines who it is that we're serving. So it's just like with the golden calf that's also recounted in this Torah portion, that even though we can take things and apply the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to them, if he didn't tell us to worship him in that way, that is not worshiping him. He considers that worshiping other gods. Good examples of this are Christmas and Easter and Halloween, and I guess we'll stop there. But those are things that we've taken and we've now applied Christian terms to them and say, oh, well, no, we've made them Christian. But the Bible doesn't give us the authority to be able to do that. The second thing that I want to point out here is in verse 22, and the Lord your God will put out those nations before you little by little. You may not consume them at once, lest the beasts of the field increase upon thee. Now, this is the thing that happens as we're doing anything with the Lord. And this is a principle, this little by little. This is the exact same thing that's given to us in the book of Isaiah on how to learn scripture and doctrine. It's little by little, here a little, there a little. And what it creates is the need for consistency in our lives. We're not going to get everything all at once. And that's something that can be overwhelming as we get into this stuff. And I just want to encourage you, take what it is that you know and walk in it. And when the Lord gives you something else, start walking in that. Whatever he walks you into, whatever he leads you into, walk in that obediently and faithfully. And then he's going to continue to strengthen you to be able to continue to grow. Sometimes we get into this stuff and we want to just devour every little thing. And I've really done this in my life. And you get a hold of knowledge that we don't necessarily have wisdom to walk in, and it can become something that's a danger, or we use it as a sword against our brethren, and we go after people who aren't necessarily don't have their eyes open to the things that we do, and it creates strife and contention. What I would recommend you doing, and I don't say this from a lack of experience, I've been doing this since 2007. So what I would recommend you do is walk in what you know, forget about the other people around you, and begin creating connections and speaking to the things when doors open to you. It's just like the gospel. If we run in and try to beat down a door that's not open to us, if a heart is not ready, then it's not going to be received. So perhaps there's an opportunity to sow a seed, but then we got to move on. Our job is not to convince everybody. We're not going to convince everybody to walk in this thing. It's a blindness that's upon our people by way of a judgment that was put upon our forefathers. And so we're not going to understand it or know it or turn to it unless the Lord opens our eyes and grants it to us. And then that's when we're able to walk in his Torah. So this little by little principle applies to every area of our lives. Now, one other thing, getting back to worshiping God in a certain way and applying his name to it. Here's in verse 26, he says, "Neither shalt thou bring an abomination into thine house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it, but thou shalt utterly detest it and shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing." What does that mean? It means that if we bring an occult item into our home, like horoscopes, or any kind of divination or any kind of witchcraft, sorcery, that kind of stuff, we're going to open the door for a curse to come into our home. In the Proverbs, it says, "A curse without a cause shall not light." And this is several portions back when we were talking about Balaam. This is how Balaam and Balak were able to curse the children of Israel. The truth is, if we're walking in obedience and we don't have open doors to the devil, then we're not going to be able to be cursed. We are able to be cursed because we have open doors. So these are things that as the Lord reveals them to us, we can begin getting things out of our home so that we can walk in blessing and fruitfulness and faithfulness. A good way to go about this is to say, "Lord, is there anything in my home that you want me to get rid of?" And if he reveals that to you, sometimes I've done this and it's been the most off-the-wall thing I didn't even think about. And nevertheless, you obey him. "Lord, forgive me for bringing that into my home. Please release me of this curse by the blood of Jesus." And then you get rid of that thing and get it out of your house. So as we're continuing down this road, Moses, the Lord through Moses, continues to lead them along in the same way that I'm trying to do here. So in Deuteronomy chapter 8, you ever wonder why things seem so hard? You know, a lot of people, when you get saved, things are really easy and everything's going your way, and then stuff doesn't go your way, or you get into the Torah and it seems harder than a lot of things. There's a reason for that. The reason is because our heart is being tested. So Deuteronomy 8 verse 1, "All the commandments which I command thee this day shall ye observe to do, that ye may live and multiply and go in and possess the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers. And thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee, to know what was in thine heart, whether you would keep his commandments or no. And he humbled you and suffered you to hunger and fed you with manna which you know not, neither did your fathers know, that he might make you to know that man does not live by bread only, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord, that doth man live." The Torah is good for us, and it's designed for our good to bring blessing in our lives. But it's also designed to test our heart, not just in a bad way, but to reveal impurities in our heart, like a silversmith is refining silver and removing, or gold, and removing impurities from it. So is the Torah. It's a mirror that's revealing our heart to us. And so later on, when we get into the New Testament and Paul starts talking about the law of the Spirit, well, the intent all along was the law of the Spirit. Now, I gave a message about the law of the Spirit at my home church, Carmel Christian Center. I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it, to go watch it. You can find that here. It's important to know that the law of the Spirit was always the intent. So built into the commandments is the desire that they would apply in every area of our lives, to the intent, or to the end, that we wouldn't harm other people and other people wouldn't harm us, and we wouldn't harm God, and then consequently, then curses come upon us. So not that you can harm God, but I'm thinking in a legalistic standpoint. the Lord allows these things to come into our lives to not go our way, to reveal to us why it is that we're walking in this law. Are we just coming to the Lord to get something out of him? Or have we genuinely had our hearts circumcised to want to walk in his ways? If you're walking in the Torah to get something from the Lord, you're doing it with the wrong intentions. And that's why things are hard. The Lord is revealing to us our heart for the opportunity for us to repent and actually receive true blessing. So you see, the underlying theme of all of this is that it's for our good. It's for our benefit, because we have a Creator who designed us, created us, and loved us and wants the best for us. Yeshua, actually in Matthew 4 and in Luke 4, he recounts this to the devil, because the devil, when he's out in the wilderness being tempted, because the devil is tempting him in the exact same areas in his heart that we are tempted with these exact same things. So you can see that the New Testament is working in parallel and in consistency with the book of Deuteronomy and all of the law of the Torah. So when the devil gives Jesus an opportunity for his heart to reveal itself, to reveal sin, Jesus, of course, has a clean heart because he's sinless. And he refers back to this very thing that the Lord is allowing him. Remember, he was fasting out there. He was hungry. He was thirsty. The Father was allowing it. And he points the devil back to this. And he says, my heart's being purified. My heart's being revealed, not purified, but my heart's being revealed in this situation, that I am pure before the Father. What's happening to us is that the impurities have to be revealed so they can be removed. What was happening with Yeshua in the wilderness was that his purity was being revealed so that he could pass all the tests that we have failed in our lives. And by nature of him passing those tests and him dying in our place, now we can be brought under his umbrella of grace and be granted that righteousness for his sake. So you see here that the Torah and the New Testament always work together. They never work in opposition to each other. So we get a further explanation here. He says of our hearts in when the blessings come. Now remember last week when I talked about that, sometimes people who are living in blessings they didn't have to work for, they don't understand why those blessings are there, and so they start wanting to change everything. Well, this is what Moses is about to warn us of here. So in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 10, it says, when you have eaten and are full, then shall you bless the Lord your God for the good land which he has given to you. Now you want to know, it's okay to pray and thank the Lord for your food, but the proper biblical way to do it is to thank the Lord for our food after we've eaten. So he goes on and it says, beware that you forget not the Lord your God in not keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes, which I command you this day, lest when you have eaten and are full and have built goodly houses and dwelt therein, and when your herds and your flocks multiply and your silver and your gold is multiplied and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart be lifted up and you forget the Lord your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Notice, it's always about our heart. It always was in the Torah. So when you hear people talk about, oh, well, grace is about your heart and the New Testament is about the heart, that's what it was always about. It's just that our hearts were not right. So we consent, like we said in last week's portion, that the law is good, but I'm not, and neither are you. And that is what brings about our need for Christ. As Shannon often says in the comments here, the Torah and the feast days and all of these things, they're a shadow that is being cast, but the body casting the shadow is Christ. So sometimes we get caught up in looking and just being overwhelmed with the shadow and forget that there's a body over here, a real person casting the shadow of all of those things that we ought to be drawn to. And that's what the Torah, done in the right way, ought to draw us to. And so when you see people who are walking in the Torah, in the law, and they're rejecting Christ, that lets you know that their hearts were wrong and it's being revealed. Paul even talks about this. They went out from among us and it was shown, it was revealed that they were not a part of us. Look, we've got to understand that not everybody who's walking in our camp is a true believer. And being in the commandments of God actually does reveal that. If we skip down to verse 19, and it shall be, if you at all forget the Lord your God and walk after other gods and serve them and worship them, I testify against you this day that you shall surely perish. As the nations which the Lord destroys before your face shall you also perish, because ye would not be obedient unto the voice of the Lord your God. Remember, how we do things is indeed showing who it is that we are worshiping. So that's why he we think about, like in a lot of our churches now, in some of our churches, we got idols everywhere and statues of people that people bow down to. But for the most part, we don't have a whole lot of that. But we are guilty in the Sunday Christian community of various forms of idolatry by seeking to worship the Lord in the same way that the nations do. And we're just applying the Lord's name to it. And here we have a built-in warning that says it doesn't work that way. You just simply can't do that. The scripture doesn't give us the authority to be able to do that. So now here's another trap and a warning that's given to us. Deuteronomy 9, starting in verse 3. This is the trap, and I see this a lot in people who are, even in Sunday Christian communities, they're very legalistic, but a lot in Hebraics and in Messianic synagogues that I've attended, there is a trap of self-righteousness. And we're being given a warning here in Deuteronomy 9, starting in verse 3, really throughout the chapter, but starting in verse 3, he says, understand therefore this day that the Lord your God is he which goes before you, as a consuming fire. He shall destroy them, and he shall bring them down before your face. So shall you drive them out and destroy them quickly, as the Lord has said unto you. Now, the thing to remember is what he's connecting it to is to their parents' unbelief. And he's saying those people that your parents said they couldn't defeat, you're going to go in and defeat them. But be really careful, because you're not doing this in your own strength. He says, Speak not thou in thine heart, after that the Lord your God has cast them out from before you, saying, for my righteousness the Lord has brought me in to possess this land. But for the wickedness of these nations the Lord does drive them out from before thee. Not for thy righteousness or for the uprightness of thine heart dost thou go in to possess their land, but for the wickedness of these nations the Lord thy God does drive them out from before you, and that he may perform the word which the Lord sware unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Understand, therefore, that the Lord your God gives you not this good land to possess it for your righteousness, but for you are a stiff-necked people. Look, the reality is we all are. We all are. I am, you are, everybody watching this, everybody who will come in contact with. Mankind is by nature, in our fallen state, without our resurrected bodies, stiff-necked and prideful and full of ourselves. If we weren't, we wouldn't be given all these warnings to not be that way and to watch out for it. And so the trap when we come into Hebraics or walking in the law of God is to start thinking, man, I'm really smart. I mean, I've really figured this stuff out. I know so much. And now I can start looking down my nose on all these other people, all these other, heathens who don't know what I know. And they're all doing Christmas and Easter and pork eating and shellfish eating and all this stuff. That is the absolute wrong place to be in our hearts. Because the truth is, as I said before, we didn't figure this stuff out on our own. We didn't. Because had we been able to figure this out on our own, there are a lot smarter people who have been believers down through the years, way smarter than anybody here, me and you included, that would have figured this stuff out. There was a blindness put upon our people for around 2,730 years. And so as a result of that, when the time was up, the Lord removed the veil, and now he's starting to allow some of us to walk in this. We have got to understand that the Sunday Christian brethren, who are our brethren, are the Lord's desired group of people to bring into this. So if we run into that camp with this sword, using it to slay people with, we are doing it with the wrong heart, and we don't understand the state of our minds and our hearts when we're going about certain things. We've got to be able to be relatable to people. We've got to be able to speak the language and talk in the ways that they are talking. This is why I use the term Jesus, and I say the Lord, and I say God, and I speak in English. And this is the primary reason why, because I'm creating connections to people that I want to hear this message, so that by chance the Lord can show some of them some grace, and perhaps their eyes would be open to this, and the Lord's plan of redemption moves on. I've studied all the same stuff that everybody else in this movement has studied. We don't need to run around and show everybody how smart we are. We're trying to win people over. Let's be relatable. Let's be humble enough to let somebody come and ask us challenging questions and not totally wallop them with a knowledge dump. Let's find connecting points and sow seeds that will actually germinate, rather than going around and dropping them in the hard and stony areas of the ground that are never going. Find the soft ground of somebody's heart and drop a seed there. We're trying to win people over here. Let's be strategic about this. That's my encouragement to all my brethren who are listening and in this movement. Let's have the right hearts. And that now brings me to the next point. Circumcision is that of the heart. Paul says this. I'm going to go to Romans chapter 2, verse 28. Paul tells us that circumcision is that of the heart. Romans 2:28, for he is not a Jew which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart and in the spirit, and not of the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. This is exactly what I was just talking about. If we're being strategic about actually trying to win people and not arguments, we're going to be pleasing to God, and not just patting ourselves on the back because we just won an argument. I've done that, and it's just not effective. So when Paul's talking about circumcision of a heart, this is not a New Testament concept. He's quoting almost directly the book of Deuteronomy and this Torah portion. Because that's what the Torah does, is it shows us our heart. It shows us the areas that need to be cleaned up and brought into covenant. Circumcision is covenant. So you can think, when you hear that word circumcision of a heart, what it means is conform our heart to covenant. Because the Lord wants us to walk in covenant, because blessings and goodness are in covenant for us and for all of those people who are around us. Now, in the book of Romans, he's talking to two different groups of people. He's talking specifically to the very smart Torah Jewish people, and he's telling them, nobody cares who your lineage is. Your heart is what determines whether or not you are God's. So we got to be careful. It's not saying everybody who gets born again becomes a Jew. That's not what that says. And I've read the comments. Those of you who want me to do a commentary on the book of Romans, we're going to do that. We're going to get through this Torah cycle, and then we're going to jump into some of those other projects. Deuteronomy chapter 10, starting in verse 12, he says, and now Israel, what does the Lord require of you? But to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Remember what Jesus said was the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. To keep these commandments of the Lord, that's how you do that. That's how you worship the Lord, to keep his commandments. And his statutes, which I command you this day for your good. For your good. It's for our good. Behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens is the Lord your God, and the earth also, and all that is therein. So, the Lord, what he's saying here is the Lord owns everything. Only the Lord had a delight in your fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, even you above all people as it is this day. Here's the key. Circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked. That is what's being reinforced. The circumcision of the heart, the positioning of our heart. And so then that leads us to the next, closing out this Torah portion, Deuteronomy chapter 11 in verses 26 and 27. He says, behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day. And a curse if you will not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day, to go after other gods which you have known. That's what's being emphasized. You see, what he's expressing to them is, your fathers failed because their hearts weren't right. He's telling that to those children. Your parents failed because their hearts were not right. And this is what Paul is explaining to the Jewish Romans, and also warning the non-Jewish Romans in the book, is the letter that he wrote to the Romans. It's a consistent message all the way through. And this is the warning for us. When we get puffed up, we turn away from God and we think we're something. We think we're smart. We think we're great. And we're set up for failure. And we start becoming a harm. We're a danger to ourselves and we're a danger to people around us. We're not the ones affecting these things in our lives. It is the Lord that's leading and guiding, and he's bestowing grace upon us that we might walk in this way. And we've got to position our hearts in this way because it will help us to walk in obedience, and it will help us to be usable by the Lord to bring other people in, which is the role of the Messiah, to work through you, to gather in the nations by seeing the blessings and the goodness that the Lord is bestowing upon your life. But we got to do it through the law of the Spirit, which is our heart being properly conformed to covenant and walking with the Father. Thank you for joining. I pray this has been a blessing to you. If you would, think about sharing this with somebody who needs to hear this. There's a lot of people in this movement that need to hear this particular message. Come on back. We're continuing on the book of Deuteronomy, and we'll see you again next week. All right? Bye, everyone.